Hello and welcome to this March subscription tasting video. Again, I'm alone because the pandemic keeps on continuing, and here in Norway we're still kind of under lockdown, so I'm all by myself tasting these coffees, but I hope you don't mind that. So today we're going to taste the coffees we're sending out to all our subscribers on the first Wednesday of March, which means spring is very soon here. Now, if you don't know what a coffee subscription is, it means that I actually pick out the coffees that I think are tasting really good at the moment, and then we send it out to all our subscribers on the first Wednesday of the month. And that means you can get up from 1 to 6 bags of coffee delivered in your mailbox anywhere in the world every month without even thinking about it. So I hope you liked the geisha that we sent out last month. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Really like this kind of mandarin flavors. But today we're going to taste 3 very different coffees, and I hope you really like them. So maybe we should just get on with it. I'll taste this side by side, actually, all of them. And we have selected 2 coffees from a farm called Los Pirineos in El Salvador. And we have sent out coffee from this farm before. But the first coffee and the third coffee we're going to taste are from that farm. And unfortunately, last year, Gilberto, the farmer, passed away. But I'm really happy to see that his kids, Diego and Fabiola, are continuing his legacy and continuing to grow and run the farm at Los Pirineos in El Salvador. And for me, they have some of the best coffees El Salvador has to offer. And I think that's kind of proven with all the Cup of Excellence awards that Gilberto managed to get. And I think we'll see more of that in the future because we know that they're growing many new varieties, and some of them you're actually going to taste today. Cool, so if you subscribe to 1 bag, you will get a bag of the Los Pirineos Orange Bourbon variety. That means it's a Bourbon cultivar where the cherries are actually orange when they're ripe, while most varieties normally where the cherries are red when they're ripe. This is orange, so it means it looks a little bit different, but it can also taste a little bit different. Now, what's a little bit different with this particular orange bourbon is that during the fermentation, I think Gilberto has added some yeast. Now, he didn't specifically tell me this when I bought the lot, but I can really taste that it's not the normal wash process that he normally does, where he will just depulp the cherries and mechanically remove the mucilage from the coffee beans before it's dried. Here I can really taste that it's been going through a fermentation stage where you depulp the cherries, you remove some of the mucilage, and then you leave it in the tank. And Gilberto he actually showed me how he did this. He would put the beans in water and add some yeast strains and keep them there for, I'm not sure how long, but maybe a day or maybe maximum 2 days. And then afterwards wash off the remaining mucilage. Now what this does is that it actually alters the flavor a little bit in the coffee. I think the yeast strain they're using is the Saccharomyces yeasts, but I'm not sure of that. And I think he bought it from this French company called Landeman, I think they're called. They're kind of specifically designed for fermenting coffee. Whether or not I'm a huge fan of this is another story, but it definitely puts a little touch on the coffee. So when you taste this coffee, you can actually taste it has this kind of fruity, almost kind of lactic acidity, almost like you get in some types of yogurt. But it really adds complexity to the coffee, I think. Has some nice fruit flavor. Maybe remind me a little bit about kind of stone fruits. But it's also very kind of chocolatey and nutty because, you know, that's the way the coffees from El Salvador taste like. At least in general, I would say. They have this kind of chocolatey kind of flavor profile. So if you, for instance, compare them to a coffee from Ethiopia, they will kind of stand out with being quite kind of rich and sweet and chocolatey. Really like this coffee. It's quite refreshing. The acidity is kind of I wouldn't say juicy because that's the word we always use, but it kind of makes your mouth salivate a little bit when you drink it, which for me is a very nice thing. And then this kind of nuttiness and chocolatiness comes sneaking in the aftertaste. So if you subscribe to 1 bag of coffee, you'll get Orange Bourbon from Los Pirineos, and I really hope you like that. The second coffee we're sending out is, if you're subscribing to 2 bags or more, you will get this coffee. We actually sent out the same lot of coffee last month, but a different screen size of beans. So last month we sent out the Karogoto AA, which means the screen size are quite big, like the big beans. This is the peaberry, where there's only 1 bean growing inside the cherry, and it kind of gets a little round. And normally they're a little bit easier to roast, I think, and that's why you also get a little bit more intensity, a little bit more kind of sweetness concentration, and I really enjoy drinking peaberries. So Karogoto, Kenyan coffee. Karogoto is a wet mill or a washing station where a lot of smallholder farmers will come and sell their coffee cherries. Of course, they're members of a cooperative that owns the washing station. And then the coffee gets processed together, and really they do a lot of separation from when the coffee is depulped. It's separated into light and heavy beans, and then it's fermented, and then afterwards it's washed in these washing channels where it's also separated by light and heavy beans. And then the coffee gets dried, where people will stand and hand sort out all defects they can see. And then afterwards on the dry mill, the coffee gets sorted more with the defects removed, and also screen sorted. That means they remove the bigger beans from the smaller beans and they're sold separately. That's how we can kind of specify the size of the coffee in Kenya. And you can also do this in other countries, but it's more common in Kenya. Let's taste it. Wow, and especially coming from an Salvadoran coffee, this coffee tastes so fruity. It's incredible. It's like berry juice. You know, that's all the description you need. Red berries, really juicy, refreshing. Oh, you should try cooling this down and maybe add a slight dash of honey or something just to sweeten it up a little bit, and then you'll have the best iced coffee. Get some floral notes. You get these kind of rose hips, black currants, a little bit of rhubarb, raspberries. Yeah, those are the kind of flavors you can find in this coffee. And coming back to the El Salvadoran Orange Bourbon, you really feel that kind of heavy chocolatey coffee. This is much more kind of refreshing and fruity, and almost like drinking white wine on a hot summer day. Now the third coffee we're sending out is also from Los Pirineos, but it's a Pacamara variety, and it's a honey process. That means the cherries are depulped, and then the beans are dried on raised beds with the mucilage still on the beans. So when you drink this, you can actually taste a little bit of this kind of fruit flavor coming from a slight fermentation process happening while the coffee is being dried. And his Pacamara, for me, it's so nice and it's so intense. Again, this kind of subtle stone fruity kind of fruit flavors. Still has this kind of chocolatiness, but it's a little bit more tart than the Orange Bourbon, which means you kind of feel like the coffee is more structured. This is like eating a chocolate bar. Well, this is kind of, yeah, it still has chocolate flavor, but it's more fruity. It's more like this kind of fruity, dark chocolatey coffees with more structure to it, I would say. So the Pacamara, you know, a lot of people say it can taste like onions. I don't really find that in the Gilberto's coffees. And I think that's also a result of how you roast the coffee. So for me, this Pacamara is still very kind of delicate and intense at the same time. Like delicate, it's difficult to kind of pinpoint this is what it tastes like. It has this kind of subtle fruit flavors that can vary depending on which coffee you compare it to. Also has this a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of chocolatiness, but it's more tart and structured and kind of also a refreshing cup. So Pacamara variety from Los Pirineos, that's the third coffee we're sending out. So if you're subscribing to 3 bags or more, you'll get that coffee as well. Cool, I really hope you enjoyed tasting these coffees. I highly recommend tasting them side by side if you can, or if you're only subscribing to one coffee, then just taste it next to an instant coffee or an espresso capsule or whatever. Then it's much easier to compare and kind of put your words on what you're actually tasting. It doesn't really matter what your reference is, as long as you have something to compare it with. It makes tasting a lot easier. Now, I actually brewed this with our normal AeroPress recipe. That's 14 grams of coffee, 200 grams of water, and steep time around 1 minute. You can find that recipe in our brewing guides, but you can also brew them as V60 or French press, and I maybe would recommend trying the Orange Bourbon in a French press, because you get a little bit more of this kind of texture, which can really suit this coffee. While the other ones, I will probably brew them on a V60 or an AeroPress to enjoy the kind of more structured, cleaner cups that you get from filter brewing. I really hope you enjoy these coffees. Next month, we're gonna taste some fun coffees from one farm in Honduras, and I really hope you will enjoy those as well. Until then, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.